Hey, welcome to Live from America podcast. This is Hatem, no Noam today. He's away. Special guest Brian Seitchik, a Republican strategist and a good friend of the show. He works with some of the biggest names in the Republican Party, including Marco Rubio and, of course, the one and only Donald Trump. Great to see you, man.
Happy to be here. It's been a while. It's a lot's gone on since we chatted last.
Yes, and I haven't seen you since the election. We spoke a little bit, but all right, take a minute, brag, do your thing. Congratulations.
Well, it's he exceeded expectations. He won 306 electoral votes in 2016. This time added Nevada 312 total electoral votes. And frankly, in 2016, you could argue it was more of a repudiation of Hillary Clinton than an embracing of Donald Trump. I believe by the same measure, 2020 was not an embrace of Joe Biden, but a rejection of Donald Trump. This is all about Donald Trump. Everybody in America knew what they were getting. They knew the good and the bad. They absolutely rejected Biden and Harris and their wokeism and their policies. And the American people said, we probably don't love all of the Trump baggage, but we'll take the policies that go with it. So this is really a repudiation of Democrats. They thought they could just wave the flag of democracy and say that's all we have to do. And it really was not the case. The American people really said they were not happy with the economic policies of Biden, with the wokeism of the Democrat Party, with their handling of foreign affairs, and not just the war in the Middle East, but also the handling of Afghanistan a few years ago. Hopefully Trump is able to keep this coalition together, but the Democrats really are in disarray here. And it's going to be interesting to see how the country moves forward in the next few weeks and months. And people like me are already thinking about the 2026 midterm elections. And what does Trump's election mean? Usually the midterm is not good for the party in power. 2018 was a really bad year for Republicans. We lost the House, we lost the Senate. It's going to be interesting to see this time with America signing up for Donald Trump for 4 more years with eyes wide open about the good and the bad. What is this going to mean for the midterms? It was pretty clear to me in 2022, every Republican and their mother wanted to run for office. There was a line a mile long in seats that were considered sort of Democrat and lean safe. Republicans wanted to run in. It'll be interesting to see if Democrats have that same fervor to run in this time. And Trump, understanding certainly how poorly 2018 went, is he and his team, a very strong team, what are they going to do differently this time to try to limit or stem the potential losses in 2026? So while the election is over, me and my fellow consulting brothers and sisters are already looking ahead to the next one.
All right. Well, I mean, one thing about Trump in power in general, or Trump in the news, is like anything becomes old news in like an hour, like because he's gonna do something else. So we're talking about the election now, and it's already like almost, hasn't been like even a month yet, almost, but it's not. It's old news. But I mean, I want to talk about it just a little bit more. When we talked about before the red wave, and it didn't happen. And then now with the midterm election last time, and now this happens. Nobody expected it, not you guys. I mean, you expected it, but not to that, as heavy as it is right now, And like you said, with somebody like Trump, with the good and bad, uh, how concerned are you as like a Republican? Because Trump is not really a Republican. I mean, he follows Republican policies now, and he's going to put a lot in power. But it's also the same thing for the Democrat. They don't have anybody line up. I think there's time for somebody like a new Obama or somebody like that comes out of nowhere. But what about the Republican Party? Like,
Well,
can it shift away from Trump, or is it going to be JD Vance and a new MAGA?
Well, it's too early to say that. If Trump lost this time, I think that really was going to be the sort of the end of the MAGA movement, because people could say, okay, we're 1 for 3 in the last 3 national elections. But that is not the case. And to your point, Hatem, the Republican Party is not the party of George Herbert Walker Bush, George W. Bush, Mitt Romney, and any of that. This is Trump's party, and the policies have really shifted. I mean, this was once a fiscally responsible party where even the mention of increased taxes was enough to do you in a primary. That's not the case right now. This is really a Trump party of populists. But the reality here is there's only one Donald Trump. His encouraging or endorsement of folks is still the most coveted endorsement in modern political history, and is still probably the easiest and most efficient way to win a competitive Republican primary. But voters have not proven an interest in turning out to vote not for Trump. And I don't think I just articulated that, but the point is a lot of people come out and voted for Trump, but did not vote for Republicans down the ticket. We lost the Senate race in Michigan, in Wisconsin, here in Arizona, Nevada. So in a midterm election with Trump at the top of the ticket, is he going to be able to get folks to get out and vote for his policies when he's not on the ticket? Democrats have a much easier job and just say, I'm not that guy. I will do things differently than that guy, which is frankly a much easier position in when elections are binary, Republican A, Democrat B. So it's going to be really interesting about how the MAGA movement and Trumpism moves forward. Certainly, J.D. Vance has to be considered the odds-on favorite for the Republican nominee in 2028. But who knows how 2026 goes? There was a lot of grumbling after the 22 race that I heard from not professional Republicans like me, but average Republicans who said, I love Trump, but if we're going to lose, I'm not on board anymore. So It's going to be interesting with Trump knowing that, because Trump is a lot of things. Self-aware is certainly one of them. He is aware of what's said about him, the good and the bad and all of it. Is he going to pick different candidates in 26 in certain areas that might not be with him on every single issue, but have a greater chance of getting elected? Or is purism and loyalty still going to be the letter of the day in those primaries? And it's going to be really interesting to see how that develops. And then, depending on how 26 goes, what will be Trump's ability to put his finger on the scale in 2028? But let's also be clear, unlike when you had previous Republican or Democrat administrations and the presidential campaign began, we'll call it January of after the midterm, the president of both parties has kind of gotten out of the way. I don't think anyone thinks Donald Trump is really going to get out of the way after the midterms. He is going to put his thumb on the scale and try to help his preferred candidate, which cuts both ways. In a Republican primary, again, a Trump endorsement is as good as it gets. But if you're J.D. Vance, and we fast forward 2.5, 3 years, let's say 3 years, and we're getting close to Iowa in 2028, you have to show some separation from the president. Not everything Donald Trump does is going to be perfect. Hindsight being 2020, there are things you're going to revisit. And Kamala Harris really hurt herself when she was on The View, when she was unable to articulate what she would do differently from Joe Biden. So if we apply that standard to J.D. Vance or any other Republican, how do you find ways to break with President Trump without pissing him off?
Yeah.
Because, loyalty is priority, is arguably the most important thing in Trump world, loyalty to Trump and to the MAGA agenda. But that's a really fine line, because the American people, if nothing else, no matter who the president is, whether it's 4 years or 8 years, or in this case, 4 years with a break of 4 years and then another 4 years, we always want what we don't have. And how are voters going to reconcile picking the next Republican nominee when Trump is not exactly going to move off the stage? So it's early. There are certainly folks already gaming this out. Marco Rubio, interestingly, chose to go the Secretary of State route, which is certainly a great job and a gravitas building job. But at the same time, it keeps him out of the daily sort of MAGA fights and the ups and downs. Unlike some of the senators who are going to have to choose to vote for some nominees that they might not want to vote for, but have to do so to stay loyal to Trump and with their own concerns about Republican primaries. Marco Rubio doesn't have to deal with any of that. But at the same time, Rubio's going to have to, should he run for president, and I suspect he will, he's going to have to run on specifically the Trump foreign policy agenda, as well as everything else. So Trump, like he does everything, sort of changes the rules and makes everything more complicated as folks like me and other political professionals look to the future and say, in a normal world, Trump's a lame duck. He wins re-election, and then the truth is there are other candidates that start, aspiring presidential candidates that start showing up in Iowa in January and February. It's always sort of a contest to see who says yes to the first Lincoln Day dinner in Ames, Iowa, or something like that. But I don't think Republicans can be so quick to say, okay, thank you, Donald Trump, we're glad you won, but I'm going to start my own run. I mean, that is going to piss him off to no end, taking any days off of his presidency. So that's just a sort of another new dynamic here that Republicans are going to have to navigate. Oftentimes you look to who came in second place, which was Nikki Haley in this last primary, but I don't see Donald Trump ever getting on board with Nikki Haley. Ron DeSantis has done a little more of a mea culpa. I don't see that happening, but you never know. But I don't think that Nikki Haley starts off as the front runner here in 2028. But just, for all of your listeners out there, the 2020 race is on, both on the Republican side and on the Democrat side.
So we're going to talk about, there's so much to talk about. I want to talk about Trump's election too, but I want to ask a quick question. Do you think, as a strategist, do you want to see the Republican Party shift him back to being a Republican Party, or leaning toward MAGA policies more?
Well, it's not really what I want. It's the reality of the situation. I think the Romney-Bush party is over. The parties are certainly evolving here. The question is, if there's a new nominee, when there's a new nominee in 2028, and they have some differences that are some policy differences with Donald Trump, how is that going to go over? Is he going to look the other way, or is he going to dump all over that person and prevent the Republican Party from shifting back? Trump doesn't go quietly, and to his credit, and he's done it for 40 plus years, he likes to focus on him. So no, I don't think the Republican Party is going to go back to the Mitt Romney party, but Trump is very much a populist and very unique. I mean, if the truth is, poll after poll in the 2024 campaign showed that the electorate at large, the American people, believe that Kamala was more liberal than Trump was conservative, which would have sounded crazy to folks 8 years ago. But, after the Dobbs abortion decision, Republicans struggled to find a position that would appeal to voters. And Donald Trump seems to have done it. He said, we gave the power to the states. When Democrats tried to say, you're taking abortion away, or you're making abortion illegal, that worked at first during the fever of the moment, sort of the fog of the war. But it really became apparent that if you live in California, New York, Oregon, Washington State, Massachusetts, your ability to get an abortion was not at all going to be impacted, which is why I think that argument specifically fell flat in the presidential campaign. But Donald Trump also, is a master of public opinion, putting his finger, into the wind and see which way is blowing. And if he can get on board with that, he's happy to sort of lead that charge. So, the party's going to change without Trump. I'm not sure that there can be MAGA without Donald Trump. Ron DeSantis kind of tried that. I'll be Trump without the baggage. And that campaign fell very flat. Now, did it fall flat because Ron DeSantis' sunshine was not Ron DeSantis' friend? Or did it fall flat because it wasn't Donald Trump able to articulate and campaign for those proposals? So
because I think because Ron DeSantis was becoming somebody who is not him. It's not him. It's only Donald Trump. That's the only thing. Everybody that try to copy him with or without the package is not going to be the same. It's just going to be a copy that's worse than him. But this is another thing about Trump. There's a lot of Republican figures are going to be destroyed because either you have to follow exactly what he says, now you label as Trump, or he's going to destroy you as an enemy. So this is one thing that the Republican Party should be concerned about is in a few years, all the figures either going to be enemies of Mike Pence is done forever, just because even though I think he did a great service for the country, by not certifying the election. I think it's a hero. If he had, it would have been a disaster, nothing I don't think Trump would have stayed in power, but it would have been a lot of violence, maybe fight,
Would have been a constitutional crisis.
But what I'm worried about was the time until the Constitution say, okay, you're not president anymore. There's going to be a lot of violence at that time. That's why I think Mike Pence is here. But anyone that against Trump from the Republican Party is either destroyed or labeled as one of, his, and it's going to be the same problem that Kamala had with Biden. So it got to be from both parties somebody new that we haven't heard about yet. So that's what I think.
Well, it's going to be, I mean, I do think the Democrats did themselves a disservice by not having a competitive primary.
Of
You know,
course.
the competition of a primary makes you better, makes you sharpen your message. Although I got to tell you, I don't think Kamala Harris on the campaign trail, her policies aside, was so bad. Objectively, I feel like she won that debate with Donald Trump.
Yeah.
She gave a fine speech at the Democratic National Convention. I don't feel it was particularly visionary, but she, articulated Democrat talking points in a way that was, effective enough. And I really feel like this was a rejection of Biden's policies and the fact that the Democrats and the American people the Democrats did lie to the American people about Joe Biden's ability to do the job. I mean, I've been talking about it with you for years. I've been
Yeah.
talking about his gait and how embarrassing it is not as a Republican, but as a U.S. citizen when this guy would shuffle and that's not Republican spin to say that Democrats lied to the American people. You couple that with record high inflation and all of the other business, and the Democrats really have to do some soul searching here. Republicans certainly have to figure out what is life going to look like without Trump. He's out of office in 4 years, but Democrats have to have their own moment where they figure out what do they stand for, and if they continue to stand for wokeism and pronouns and this sort of nonsense, then they're not going to win any elections anytime soon.
Yeah, I think she made she was okay, but like she made a lot of big mistakes. One of them that she wasn't clear in her message. What was your message as a president? Not the policies, but messages. All right, so let's talk about interesting thing. Trump's elections. You hear the names, and sometimes you're like, holy, like I want to know what's your reaction when you hear names like Matt Gaetz or Kash Patel or any of this. Do you be like, oh my God, like do you have the same thing or like, oh yeah, that's good, somebody out of the usual, but also, when a president went as a party, as your party, you want your people to be all over the place, but now he's getting yet some Republican, but not like politicians. So
Well,
what's your thoughts on all his picks so far? Not, but like
Well, I thought Matt Gaetz was a
controversial.
terrible pick. I
Yeah.
really, grossly unqualified for the job, not a serious person, and really had very little chance to of getting confirmed. As for the other picks, I'm not incredibly surprised. Trump was pretty clear that he was going to try to gut these organizations. I can't speak to the specific qualifications of each of the candidates. Some will have an easier time than others. Marco Rubio should pass with no problems. Elise Stefanik will pass with no problems. I don't know about Kash Patel. I don't know about Tulsi Gabbard and Robert Kennedy Jr. But my issue isn't with the names per se or their qualifications. It's with the distraction that it's going to cause. I know, and I should say, I believe that Trump won because his policies were more palpable than the policies of Democrats. Well, if we spend the next 30 to 45 days, maybe 60 days, talking about, did he or didn't he, did she or didn't she, is she a Russian agent, isn't she this and that, it's going to be a distraction from getting things done.
Yeah,
And
no,
that's
but
my
but here's
problem.
here's a question though. You have RFK, you have Elon Musk, you have Tulsi Gabbard, all these guys are not Republicans. They're not from the party, really. So doesn't you have Marco Rubio, who's I think is good in a way, but now he took a road that's kind of surprising because he's gonna do Trump's policies and it can either destroy him. What was the last one to have his job will become a president?
I can I think it's been a long,
Yeah, I
long
don't
time.
even remember anybody that had
I,
I'm surprised he took that job. But
Well, I think he, I don't, well, he's always shown a strong interest in foreign policy. Even from his first days in the Senate, he's been interested in foreign policy. I think that's a real passion of his. And I think he must have made the calculus because at the end of the day, I believe he wants to run for president. I mean, he's run for president in the past. This is hardly some great leap on my part to say he wants to run again. He still by modern standards, relatively young. And I think he thought taking a different path and getting out of the Senate would be beneficial. So
Yeah.
I understand that. But as for the picks, despite the fact that they call Trump this right-wing monster and this and that, his cabinet, let's say everybody got confirmed, would be the most ideologically diverse in modern times.
I mean, not really. I mean, it would be
Well, it
on the
is
look,
because
but it's people who like
yeah, but you've got
vowed for
former
him.
Democrats in there. I mean, in previous administrations, they've kept over. Sometimes they'll keep over one from the other administration. I think Norm Mineta stayed over was held over years ago.
No,
Usually,
but the point is like if you keep a Democrat that's actually a Democrat, it's fine. But he's not. He's keeping somebody who left the party and joined his team. And so that's not really
yeah, but no one's calling Tulsi Gabbard or Robert Kennedy Jr. right wingers. They might agree with Trump and they might be
Yeah.
former Democrats, but they're not ideological conservatives.
But
And
they trash the Democratic Party as well. So that's one of the things that you have to do to get to his. It's not like he's hiring somebody who's like a Democrat who disagrees with him, but he respects him. But
I mean,
again,
Robert Kennedy, well, hold on. Robert Kennedy was getting 15 to 20% of the Democratic primary vote for a while when he was running against Biden. So, Tulsi Gabbard left years ago. I mean, she's a Republican. I mean, I get the joke on her. She's been a Republican really for years. But Robert Kennedy Jr. ran for president as a Democrat. And Trump clearly, by all exit polls, got significantly more Democrat support than Kamala Harris got Republican support. So, yes, I'm not saying these are AOC Democrats or anything, but they are not right-wing Republicans. And I do believe that cabinet meeting would be among the most diverse ideologically the diverse cabinet that we've seen in decades, really. And whether you like Trump or not, I think you have to give him that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a unique cabinet, but it's not like reaching across the aisle or anything like that. But what's interesting is like the study I'm sure you just saw is like every single state lent Republican had more Republican votes than ever. Every single state. It's crazy. So when you see picks like RFK. Matt Gaetz obviously is crazy pick. I don't know how he even or why he thought about it. Sometimes I feel like, you know what? Let's give him something to talk about. Let's get him that. Like, I don't know what he's thinking. But RFK or the involvement with Elon Musk, like so much, does that bother you at all? Or how do you see that?
No, I mean, I just sort of this is what the Trump world looks like. He does things differently.
But this is again always my point is like it's the Trump world, not the Republican world. That's why I'm
yes, and I agree with that. It is the Trump world, but I'm not surprised by it. At this point, none of the picks surprised me. I mean, he basically said he was going to pick Robert Kennedy. The last 2 weeks of the campaign when they were campaigning together. So I don't feel like any of this is much of a surprise here. Nor should it be surprise to anybody that the most important quality for Trump is loyalty. I mean, that's not a stunning insight or revelation by me. I've been saying it for years, as have plenty of folks. That is the most important qualification. The interesting thing here is, what are the senators going to do? Republicans can afford to lose up to 4 senators. You got to believe that Collins from Maine and Murkowski from Alaska are always going to be the first 2 to go. Collins is up for re-election in Maine, and Murkowski does not seem to have a real fondness for Trump or MAGA. So it's really about the 2 others. And, when there was talk of doing recess appointments, well, that was a direct shot at the advise and consent power of the Senate. It's going to be interesting to see, are there senators who just won re-election this time who may not run again? Mitch McConnell has 2 more years left. It doesn't look like he's going to run again. Is he going to be an obstructionist to Trump's agenda? It's really, these Republicans, specifically the senators, are going to have to make a decision pretty early. Either A, they're not going to run for re-election, so they feel the freedom to go against Trump, or they're willing to endure Trump's wrath in a primary. And, let's be clear, the primary job of an elected official is to get re-elected or get elected to another job. They can talk about serving the people all they want, but their goal is to get reelected. That is their number one priority in most cases. So it's really going to be interesting as these Senate nominees, for the cabinet positions come before the Senate, what senators are going to potentially buck and say no to Trump? It's hard to believe that anybody that wants to run for president is going to say no to Trump in any of the cabinet picks. Anybody that has a potentially competitive primary, in their state, if there's somebody, let's say, waiting in the wings to run against them in a primary, it's hard to think any of those senators are going to buck Trump. Trump is again the center of the universe politically and all of that here in America. So people are going to have to pick their spots. At the same time, Democrats cannot oppose every nomination. They're going to have to pick 2 or 3 at most and plant their flag there. I don't know if that's going to be, Secretary of Defense or Gabbard or Kennedy, but Democrats are going to do the opposition research and all that, and then they're going to pick 2 or 3 people and try to fight Trump on that front. But they can't fight every battle. They'll lose every battle, but they're certainly going to try to get a few scalps here.
When you see somebody like, the Secretary of Defense, like, what's your thoughts in specific? Like, there are certain jobs that, yeah, you wanna have new blood, you wanna have something new, but Secretary of Defense, I mean, it's a big deal.
It's a huge deal. It's the largest bureaucracy in the country, if not the world.
Yeah.
Billions, trillions of dollars are spent there. I think the committee hearings are really going to matter there. It is an honest, intellectually honest to say he does not have the experience running an agency, anything of that size. And the opposition research is coming out, taking shots at him from the previous organizations he was a part of. So with something like that, his nomination specifically, I think Republican senators are able to say that they want to show deference to the Republican president who just won by modern standards, a landslide, not by old standards, but by modern standards, a landslide, won all 7 of the battleground states, increased his share of the electoral vote. So these committee hearings are really going to be very important. We've already seen, obviously, Matt Gaetz withdraw his name. We have to see what else comes up and how they answer questions. In a pre-Trump world, these nominations for cabinet posts were pretty mundane, pretty boring. Sometimes there was one. I remember, the big scandal when Bill Clinton was naming his people, I think it was Kimball Wood maybe and somebody else, was that they had hired illegal aliens to be nannies and gardeners. And that was, excuse me, that was a big deal and cause for uproar and all that. Well, that's insignificant in today's Trump world. So we're going to have to see what's going to come out of these hearings, not just in terms of opposition research, but how do they answer the questions? And can Democrats try to get 4 senators to join them? That is no easy task when Trump is very clear about going after those who he gets sideways with. Trump is not opposed to shitting on somebody in a Republican primary, even if that senator, let's say, has the best chance to win the seat. And by dumping on that person, they couldn't put somebody that maybe is more loyal to Trump, but has less of a chance to win the November election. That calculus thus far doesn't seem to have bothered Trump. We'll see if that holds here.
Yeah. And the other thing is, like, the good news is, like, it's only 4 more years. That's it. No more. And then after that, they're going to have to find a way to, like, be loyal to him, but separate themselves at the same time. So it's going to be interesting next few years. But I mean, like, it really kind of depends on how he does, especially like early on with, because he made some tough promises. And this is the next question is like, he's going to end the war in Ukraine. He's going to end the war in the Middle East. He's going to bring the hostages home. All this before he even take office. It's, I mean, it's smart because I think a lot of them are kind of winding down anyway. But at the same time, like, I think that's what the world needs in general is a new leadership, but not only the U.S. I mean, I think it should be new leadership in the Middle East as well to be able to do that kind of peace. But what do you think when he takes it? Because we all know what happens when he doesn't take no for an answer, or like he doesn't take a loss. So what do you think the first few 100 days of Trump presidency is going to be like?
Well, first of all, Trump, I do think, is going to be the beneficiary of a better economy. The economy is better than Biden and Harris were given credit for. That being said, people are still pissed off about inflation. So while the rate of inflation may have decreased, it's not as though prices decreased. So one, I think Trump is going to have the benefit of a stronger economy, even on day one than people realize. Two, Trump is going to do things, more tax cuts, more cutting of regulation to empower entrepreneurship. I think he's going to restart the business of America, which is good. At the end of the day, first and foremost, people usually vote their pocketbook. And this time the American people felt squeezed. So if they're in a better position in 2 years or 4 years, that's the Trump economy. And, it allows for an ability to say, compare the first time he was president with the 4 years Biden-Harris were in charge, and then the 4 years that Trump was in charge again. So he's going to have the economy to his benefit. As for his other promises, well, you know as well as I do, he's going to do everything he can. And if something doesn't happen, he's going to point the finger and blame someone else and says it didn't happen because of that son of a bitch.
Yeah.
And that's what he's going to do. But like all presidents, even though this is not Trump's second consecutive term, he's going to be very focused on his legacy. And if he can end the war in Ukraine, if he can bring the hostages home or have a hand in that, those are big legacy building opportunities. Biden, who was supposed to be this great foreign policy president, years of in the Senate and new world leaders and this and that, pretty ineffectual foreign policy all the way around it. And I say that not as a Republican, but as an American.
Yeah.
Now what is Trump going to have to do to get the war in Ukraine to end? I read his tweet yesterday, or Truth Social, whatever it was, and I'm sure you did too, where he made very clear to the terrorists that the hostages better come home or there will be hell to pay. I believe Donald Trump when he says that, and I suspect some of the terrorists may do that too. While Biden sort of talked tough on Netanyahu, he didn't seemingly put the brakes on him all that much. Looks like the opposite is going to be true for Trump. Trump is going to encourage Netanyahu to go after those folks. Whether
but I mean, Netanyahu's going after
Hamas.
everybody, not just terrorists. He's going after actually more of the civilians, that amount of people that dying. That's why one of the things when what he said, Trump, yesterday, it was a Truth Social, like hell is going to break in the Middle East, the whole Middle East. That's what he said. So he's, in one way, he's saying like, I am a peace, no war president. The other way, it's like, if this doesn't happen, it's going to be hell. And so you don't know which way he's going, and this is one of the things, like he for the first time, I mean, he did a lot of smart things in the campaign, but one of the things he reached out to to the Arab American votes, to the Muslim votes, to the Jewish votes, and he kind of like got everybody almost, in his. But now he's gonna start, and this is one of the things that Kamala also, fucked up, is like she had no clear message on what's going on in the Middle East, so she lost both.
You are correct. She had no vision. She tried to please everybody, and when you please everybody, you wind up pleasing no one.
Yeah, and you can tell that she was lying, so that nobody can trust her. Like, that Trump is leaning toward Israel and Netanyahu, but at the same time, that he says, I'm gonna end the war. But now he's like, some of his promises are changing. He's like, oh no, I'm not ending the war. I'm gonna tell it to hell. I don't think he's gonna do that. But because I mean, how are you gonna do that? It's
Well,
already
I guess
it's already hell.
I don't think he's going to put any brakes on Netanyahu. I mean, let's remember when Israel made clear they were going to respond to Iran, the White House made clear that oil fields and nuclear reactors and all that were off the table. Trump said that was ridiculous. If you're going to go to war with Iran, how do you not go after their oil? So, it seems to me as though Trump is the way he's going to empower Netanyahu is going to be his way to try to end the war, is by making clear there aren't going to be any guardrails on Netanyahu and give him full authority to end the war. And that fear may indeed be enough to end the war. I don't know.
Yeah, I think Netanyahu's policy is, I mean, this is, off topic, but I think Netanyahu's policy is not to end the war, and I don't think this is one of the things of the Biden administration also that I think it's fucked up. Is like, they look like they slowing down Netanyahu, but they're not. They actually give him green light. They still give him the weapons.
That is true. They made the whole brouhaha about the bomb.
Yeah, so they will say something. They will say something. But one of my biggest stories about how Biden's it's and the Democratic Party like went to that level is like, it's all about things that they say, but not they do. The policies at the end of the day, especially foreign policies of the US, is going to be the same. But Biden gave green light to Netanyahu. I mean, like, look how many innocent people are dead. So many people. But the one example I always say was like, I remember when Biden was after the Saudi Arabia, the killing of the journalist Khashoggi. Uh, he says, "I'm gonna go. I'm never gonna go to Saudi Arabia. I'm not gonna." And then he ended up going, and he said,
Yep.
"When I'm gonna go, and this is what the big deal. I'm not gonna shake his hand. I'm gonna fist bump him. Like that's gonna make a difference. Like, oh my
That was
God."
so stupid. That
It's
was
so
so
stupid.
stupid.
This is what I'm saying. It's like we're not gonna shake hands because that means we're friends. No, I'm just gonna fist bump you. And they went and they fist. It's like seriously, you think we're stupid? Like, what are you talking about? Of course, behind the door, at the doors, you're like hugging and kissing and whatever. Like, So this is what the mistake that they do. But that's the difference. I think in a foreign war, also with the Democrat and the Republican. Democrat will say, "Oh, we have to end the war, stop the killing," but they're not stopping anything. And
But
I
let's
think.
also understand, to what I said earlier, Trump is, if not today, very soon will be in legacy mode. And that has been the crown jewel of American foreign policy for decades, is trying to get peace in the Middle East. And I believe that while Trump is a friend of Israel and will be a better friend to Israel than Kamala Harris would have been should she be elected, Trump at the end of the day wants peace for his legacy purposes.
Yeah.
So he's going to empower Netanyahu up to a point, and then if it becomes politically inconvenient for Trump, or this legacy building opportunity goes away, Trump's going to reverse course pretty quickly.
Oh
You
yeah.
know,
I mean, one of the things that people ask me is like, "Hey, I didn't vote for Trump," but they were like, "Hey, why you're not like scared about Trump or his picks, even like the ambassador of Israel, all this, I was like, no, because Trump is a businessman. When a businessman comes, his relationship with Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates is very important to him and to his legacy. So just like now, he sees these countries as stronger than Biden would have seen it. So that will give negotiation a good term for peace because they're gonna be like, hey, if Saudi Arabia normalized with Israel, that's gonna be good enough to reach peace. So I think it's gonna happen, but you need leaders like in my opinion Netanyahu should be uh done, because he doesn't want peace. What about Ukraine? You think he's gonna be able to stop that?
well, that's a tricky one. That's been such a long and protracted war. There certainly is history between Putin and Trump and Zelensky and Trump. I have no idea really how that's going to go. It seems to me as though if Zelensky were willing to give up some lands, make some land concessions, that lets Putin claim victory and ends the war. I'm not sure Zelensky is going to be willing to go along with that.
Yeah.
But at some point, Trump is not going to support continued arms sales to Ukraine, despite what the senators or anybody else wants to do. Which means it would then be it would be incumbent upon Europe to pick up the slack. I'm not sure they have any interest or the financial ability to do that. So that one is more of a wild card to me, is what happens in Ukraine. There's the sort of the old Republican guard, sort of the neocons. They, I think, view the calculus this way. If Russia is involved in a war with Ukraine, that costs us, relatively speaking, a small amount of GDP or our defense budget, but it degrades Russian military, well, that's a win for us. But some of the more isolationist Republicans and Trump Republicans do not support that. So to me, that's really dependent upon Zelensky, and is he willing to trade land? Russia has proven that they're willing to just throw bodies at the problem, and that they will absolutely win a war of attrition. And because Russia's not a democracy, they're not accountable for the deaths of their men and women, like an American president or somebody in a democratic country that has to stand for re-election, or party has to stand for re-election. So what happens in Ukraine to me is really much more of a wild card. Both Zelensky and Putin know this. My sense is Putin wants to get into the Trump presidency and see how his relationship with Trump works, and kind of go from there. But that one is really a wild card.
Yeah. I think that's the thing is like I think Trump's victory is to stop the war, he's not gonna care if Russia kept some land or not. All
No,
he
he don't
cares
give a
about is
shit.
stopping the war, and I don't think he should. You know, what about tariff? This is one thing about also like when you have president like Trump, and I think this is obviously I'm not a big fan, but I am a fan of, and I said that before, uh, a strong American president, because when we have a strong American president, first of all, if we're talking about the hostages, you know, there's no way back in the day there will be American president and the American hostages will still be there. They would come out, the first one to come out, always were American hostages, you know?
I
So,
agree. I,
so
yeah.
that's one thing. The other thing is like as soon as he talked about tariff, he's not even president yet. Prime Minister of Canada flew right into, this is power. This is what the respect that you should get as a, I mean, Biden at some point was just like it's joke, it was not, you see with other presidents and they shine. And this is the greatest country in the world and should have the strongest men. Now, I agree. I disagree with ever not strong men as Trump wanted to think strong man is, but I think that we have to have that image. It's important because if you have a strong man, that war would not, we're not going to have as many Palestinian civilians that died as we have now. It's ridiculous. It's crazy the amount of innocent women and children that died over. You're not going to have American hostages still there. You're not going to have, all these people. So I think this is one of the advantages of having a strong slash crazy president.
And it's true that as soon as the hostages come home, then the killing will stop shortly thereafter.
I don't think
I think once we get those hostages home, I mean, there are still
I don't know. I don't think it's
Israelis
ever was
held in
about the
captivity.
hostages for Israel or Hamas. I think both. It's kind of fit the agenda. Obviously, I think, and again, this is out of the topic, but I think they could have had the hostages back if they want. But I think it was about a statement. You would never dare to do this again. So they wanted to make crazy, crazy, and this is agenda with Netanyahu that he always. It's like a dream coming true. But what about tariff? You think this is because this could go either way.
Well, if you look at Donald Trump ideologically, he used to be a Democrat. He used to be pro-choice. He was going to run for the Reform Party 25 years ago. The one thing that has been really consistent for Donald Trump over the last, 3 or 4 decades is his criticism of open trade. He didn't talk about immigration 25 years ago. That's been consistent for the last decade or so. But his opposition to, or his belief that free trade really hurts the American worker. I mean, he was opposed to NAFTA, in the Clinton years. So I don't know if he's going to implement the tariffs or not, but I do believe that he is willing to do so. And I believe that, again, if you look at some of his policy positions, and some have been more fungible than others, his discussion of trade and his belief that the U.S. has been making bad trade deals for a long time that has adversely impacted the American people, well, that has been consistent in Trump's political DNA for 25 to 30 years. So I think the answer is it's totally possible. I don't, I'm not an economist. I read the articles which talk about how bad it would be for the economy and how it would raise prices for everyday Americans. I read the words on the page. I'm not an economist, so I can't offer a specific rebuttal to that. But I believe Trump when he says he's willing to do it if he doesn't get certain concessions. I think he'll do it. And I
Yeah.
think the hope is that those tariffs won't last that long, that there'll be a bite on the country that the tariffs are imposed upon, and then they will change their policies. But I absolutely believe Trump when he says he's going to do it or willing to do a 100% tariff. I'm going to take him at his word.
Yeah, we shall see. I hope just he can he get the this is one of the things that worries me that he have people around him that is just, loyal. Loyalty is the important thing like we discussed, but are they going to be able to give him a good advice? That's what we're going to see, I guess. You need to surround yourself by people who knows what's going on. One of the funny thing I heard it was an X yesterday that he offered the Prime Minister of Canada that Canada becomes a 51st
I
state.
read that too. Because
That's
Trudeau
such a
was talking about
Trumpy
how the
thing.
tariffs went so Trump,
Yeah.
to say to the sovereign leader of another country, well, if your country falls tough shit, you can become the 51st state. Very funny,
Yeah.
very funny. But to your point, no one made Trudeau get on a plane and go break bread with Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago. I mean, he wanted to do that.
I mean, they also have an election coming, and over there they're talking about, you didn't make good relationship with Trump, so now we're gonna lose. So the guy running now, he said, I'm gonna be good with Trump, so we're gonna take that. So, but the power of one X or one tweet or one thing or one policy makes other people jump into and come in a plane and have dinner with you. And he's not the only one. There's a couple other people that came and also like, when they hear there's something is like, hey, let's talk. I think they also want to see to themselves, is he really that crazy? Is he going to do it? What's going on? But this is one thing that I think it was missing from the presidency is I hope and I wish he's not as crazy. I want powerful president, but not like unpredictable. Even for me in a smaller scale, podcast like this, I cannot book guests because I don't know what Trump's gonna say the next day. Like if I book somebody like next week, he's gonna do something within a week that's gonna be just crazy.
We
All
are
right, so
certainly back to that. Trump's the center of the world again. Like it or not, that's what it is.
oh yeah, yeah. Well, so last two questions. The first one is like it was drain the swamp the first time. Now it's the deep state. All these things. What's your thoughts? Like you're kind of into this. Like what's your thoughts on the deep state and like changing and all these, but because the deep state is also Republicans, it's not only Democrat. There's a lot of people. So I feel like some people feel like there's two different definitions of deep state. Some people think that there's deep state, and some people think it's like the people that are in the system right now. Everybody's part of the system, and he wants to change that, which could be good. Like you see, like, but I don't know. I never trust like somebody like Elon Musk or stuff. I just cannot trust them for some reason.
Well, I think of the deep state as the permanent bureaucracy
Yeah,
that regardless of who is the cabinet person leading that position, you have hundreds, if not thousands, of bureaucrats that are very difficult to fire, that have their own agenda. That to me is what the deep state is, and candidate Trump made clear that he was going to blow all that shit up. That he talked about the deep state openly. This isn't something that has just come up in the last 3 weeks since the election day. So the key for Trump is, how do you affect real change? How do you set it up so that the American people believe that their government and their agencies are responsive to them without going too far and causing havoc and disarray, and then you lose the American people. It's a fine line.
yeah.
In a Republican primary, everybody talks about, let's get rid of the Department of Education, let's get rid of the Department of Energy, let's get rid of this, let's cut the bureaucracy. It sounds great in a Republican primary, and there is some merit to it, but at some point, the rubber has to hit the road. So if you get rid of the Department of Education, and in theory, some of that federal wokeism that goes with it, are you just going to send checks to the states to spend money? And what is the formula to do that? Is it number of people in the state? Is it kids in the state? So what's good here at a campaign level that sounds good and folks like me are big on, has to actually be implemented now at a lower level. And at some point people say, has this been good for me or bad for me?
Yeah.
And now we're back to the legacy conversation. Again, because the deep state to me is the bureaucracy, and I've worked in government for a very short period of time, but I get it. Bureaucracy's real.
Yeah.
Their ability to throw whatever policy or whatnot into molasses and slow down or kill the process is fair. And if you're also part of that bureaucracy, it's not an unreasonable calculus to say, you know what? Trump is 4 years.
Yeah.
I've had this job for 10 years, 15 years, and I'm going to have it for another 15 to 20. I'm just going to wait this guy out. And because that is a real thing, maybe Trump has to pick some of these people that are more bombastic, that don't have the experience, aren't caught up in the the petty squabbles of the past and just say, this is wrong and we're going to fix it. And they're not going to do everything perfectly. And like anything that government does, there are winners and losers. And if you're one of the losers, you're certainly going to complain about it. And you're not going to be happy about it. But it doesn't change the fact that Donald Trump was very clear that he was going to shake things up in Washington, and now he's going to do it, and we're going to see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's a good idea, but like to shake things up, you need people to do the right way of shaking up and understanding the system. And he's not picking the right people; he's picking the loyal people. But we'll see.
That's true.
Yeah,
but picking, let's say you picked a member of Congress that used to be a teacher, or a senator that, they're going to go in and they may affect things on the margins and make things better.
Yes.
Trump didn't talk about fixing things on the margins on the stump. He talked about blowing shit up. Pardon me. He talked about affecting real change in Washington. And the only way to do that is to bring someone in that doesn't have any ties to the current system. I'm not telling you it's going to work. I hope it works.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to sit here and blindly tell you that all that stuff is going to make things better. But I do believe that Trump is doing what he said he was going to do and what he promised he was going to do. And that is, again, go up and blow some shit up.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna see, I always see, like, to change the system, you need somebody from the system that understands the system. Outsider is great, but it's gonna be like just ideal. It's just like, oh, I have this idea, but I don't know the in and out. And 4 years is not enough time.
Exactly. If he had 8 years to do it, then maybe you could do that gradual change. But Trump wants this change to happen right away because, again, these bureaucrats can wait him out.
Yeah, and that's why it's gonna happen, But all right, last question. Speaking of legacy, we've been talking about, and second term is always about legacy, and Trump is obviously very big in legacy. I mean, I think he's gonna create his own legacy either way in his mind. But it's a possibility that he's gonna do good things for his legacy. We shall see. I'm not holding my breath. But speaking of legacy, Joe Biden pardoning his son, last thing. That's I mean, too much argument. What's your thoughts on that? Everybody is saying either, okay, as a father, you should do that, and everybody as a father is like, yeah, I would do the same thing. But you're also the president, and you also, I don't think that he lied. A lot of people is like, he's been lying to the American people, who said he will never pardon. I think he really truly believed that he didn't have to pardon him, but now he feels that he have to pardon him. He's like, you know what? Fuck it. You made me leave the election. Now I'm losing. Now we lost. Now I'm gonna do it. But I mean, he is destroying the last piece of his legacy, in my opinion. What do you think? What's your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I do think he was lying the whole time. I think he was absolutely going to pardon Hunter the whole time. And I can't tell you,
but I don't think even if Kamala won,
it's possible because yes, that obviously would have been a Democrat-controlled Justice Department, but there's still a sentencing coming up in a couple of weeks. So I think this was one about the blanket pardon was about the future, but the immediacy of the pardon now was about a upcoming sentencing and keeping Hunter Biden out of jail. As for Biden's legacy, this is a final piece of it, but I think his legacy was really tarnished when he decided to run for president again, when he clearly was not up for the job. So this is kind of a cherry on top of it. But, they talk about presidents in history. You get one or two lines and that's all you get. Joe Biden's place in history prior to Election Day was he, quote, ended the reign of Donald Trump. He served as a bridge for Democrats. And that was going to be his place in history, and some infrastructure spending, which may or may not pay dividends for America down the road. Not the sexiest legacy ever, but a legacy nonetheless. But the fact that he stayed in the race way longer than he should have, that there was a coronation of Kamala Harris and not an earning of the nomination, I think that's really his legacy, that he beat Trump and then gave it all back and gave up, quote unquote, all of their gains and their policies. So this to me is just sort of a kick 'em while he's down. I mean, I think this is good for Republicans now. We're not talking about the Secretary of Defense nominee and Tulsi Gabbard, and we've got the Democrats on defense. But, Trump's been claiming that the Justice Department has been politicized, and Joe Biden just ratified that assertion. Yeah. So, and I do think it makes him a liar because he said it so emphatically for so long. Now, I never believed him. So it's a lie, yes, but again, I'm not surprised by it. But it certainly does add to the negativity of Biden leaving out the door and how the American people are going to view him. I remember I was living in California when Arnold Schwarzenegger pardoned someone. There was the Speaker of the House, a Democrat Speaker of the House, whose son pled guilty to murder, to participating in a murder, and got a number of years, pled guilty, and walking out the door, Arnold Schwarzenegger pardoned that guy, and that wasn't a family member. And I still hear older Californians talk about that. And again, that is not the end of the world. I'm guessing that really only impacted one person, but that left a stain on Arnold Schwarzenegger's governorship in California. And I think this is going to leave an additional stain on Biden's legacy. It's not the defining moment. I think the defining moment is probably choosing to run for re-election again. And that debate, which was in the pantheon of awful debates, maybe the worst presidential debate ever. Yeah. But in next week, Trump's going to say something and he's going to piss somebody off and we're going to be on to the next fight. So I don't think this one has a lot of lasting legs in terms of politics today, but it does contribute to the poor standing Biden has among the American people.
I also think that, Biden's job was, or he ran on, I'm going to end Trump presidency and the movement. Not only he didn't, it became stronger than ever, and he won so much, and it's crazy. I mean, again, because of a lot of mistakes and a lot of policies that they did wrong, but I mean, this is his legacy. I don't know how he views it, but he doesn't get a lot of credit. The economy did get better. COVID, he dealt with it a little bit better. I think that he's extended. I think he paid, the second check should not have come out. There's certain things that there was more, but yeah, that pardoning thing, I don't know. I disagree with you with that. I don't think he always wanted to pardon. I don't think he was lying, but I think he believed that he would, either Kamala would pardon him or somebody. But I think that's now that Trump, I don't think he trusts either the Republican or the Democratic Party right now after they drove him out. So
I mean, all that being said, if my daughter did something and I had the power to pardon her, I can't tell you I wouldn't do it.
Of course,
but
again,
that's what being a parent is, for good or bad.
Yeah.
But it was the emphaticness of I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. And it's not 1920 here. There's tons of tape of him showing it. And also, the clip is resurfaced of Senator-elect Adam Schiff from California talking about trying to pass a law that wasn't going to let presidents, because it was Trump at the time, pardon family members. So hypocrisy alert again in Washington. I know.
Yeah. Well, I think this is the thing, is like, I think the pardoning power should have a serious talk. I don't think anybody should pardon, especially in certain crimes. I mean, the Hunter Biden, okay, it's taxes and, gun, maybe he didn't do really anything, but I think there's certain crimes that should not be pardoned at all. But speaking of pardoning, Trump promised to pardon Russ Oprah. So I hope he does. We had his mother in the show here before, and she's amazing, and I think he did his time, so we'll see. But yeah, being a parent, every parent that I know would say the same thing. We will do the same thing.
I do have one wish, which I want to get on the record here with you, with the Trump presidency. I wish he had done it at the end of his first term. What do we know about aliens? I'm not joking. I would like to know. I feel like if anybody is the guy to put that out there, it's Donald Trump.
I'll tell you one thing. I know for sure there's aliens, and I know why, and I can tell you, I can prove it.
Okay.
Right? Yeah.
You've got me. You've got me.
Okay. And the reason is Donald Trump. I thank him for that. He was the one that made me know that there's aliens, because Donald Trump cannot keep his mouth shut. He have to share anything. So what does he do the first day or the first 100 days after he go to the office when he become president and look at all the files? He created the Space Force. Why would you create the Space Force if there's no aliens? Because
that's a fair point. I hadn't thought of it that way. That's an interesting juxtaposition.
So he's like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm gonna be the first one to say, like, because back in the day, he couldn't say there's aliens, but he created who would think, like, why would you think of the Space Force? The only reason you think of it is you read a report that there's aliens, and you do it.
You know what? I have a rule in politics. When someone gives me something good, I give them credit The first two times they'd be like, "Oh, I was doing this podcast and Hatem said the smartest thing." I'm going to say that twice, and then I'm just going to take it as my own because that is a really, really valid point. You're right. He created Space Force after he said, "What's the story with aliens?" Probably.
Yeah, exactly. So we
I like
already
that
know.
one. But let's release it all. I would like to know other countries like Australia release their information. The
Yeah.
U.S. decided last century that this was going to be a private matter, that it would, upset the people and this and that. But I'd like Trump to get that information out there. And honestly, that would be a real man of the people type thing to do.
Yeah.
That would be part of his legacy and endear him to everyday Americans.
What about JFK?
I don't think America's calling for more information on that. I'd like to know because I'm a nerd about such matters, but the aliens thing I think would really captivate the hearts and minds of America.
Yeah, yeah. And he could win. He could be like he could win the hearts of everybody. It's like that could go down as legacy. If you want to talk about legacy.
Big legacy. Big legacy.
His last day, and you know what? Fuck it. There is aliens.
There are aliens, deal with it. Trump out.
I'm out. Well, we are out too. Brian, thank you so much. If people want to follow you or find you or have anything coming up, you want to share with people?
Sure. I'm not really active on Twitter. You can find me on Instagram at BPS1015, or look for me on News Nation or Newsmax and things like that.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being here. Looking forward to have you again soon.
Thank you so